And thank you again, Rob, for doing this. I
Oh,
know a lot of
absolutely.
people are really curious to hear. One guy in particular in our Slack submitted the majority of the listener questions
Oh,
because, like,
that's
if
awesome.
I had a chance to ask a VC something, what would I ask him?
I do have one question. When does did I miss where Peter pops in right at the end?
Yeah, it's down there on line 41.
Can you say?
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I was looking before the thank yous.
Yeah, I kind of did it unusually before because I just want to finish with him and then go straight to music.
I want to finish with him. Finish.
Didn't mean it to sound so aggressive.
He's finished. He's fish. He's fish.
Any other questions, Rob, before we?
No, I'm assuming that you'll queue me up at the appropriate time and all that stuff.
Yeah, and for the top stories of the day, if there's any in there particularly that you have something to say, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just ask you kind of general opinion questions that anyone that totally I think good. Anyone.
And if Slack channel is running, then you'll get questions from the audience.
Yeah, well, we got our IRC running too, so good.
Good. Yeah, Slack was causing trouble today too.
Yeah, I know. A couple people in our Slack had trouble, but I didn't. So it's one of those intermittent.
I think it depends on which server you got routed to.
Yep.
But I couldn't upload anything, so I couldn't upload.
Oh yeah, Peter Wells was who's our Mobile World Congress person was having a hard time uploading to Slack. That's probably why.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a guy making a volunteer site to collect things like pics and topics, and he was ready to show it to me. And of course, it's back-ended on Heroku, which uses S3. And so as soon as I clicked the link, I was all like, this is great. And then I looked like, except I can't see it right now.
Oh, that's too funny. Hey, by the way, one thing, don't ask questions on the size of our fund.
Oh, okay.
Because we're in the middle of
cool.
We're in the middle of getting more money. So
sure. I probably wouldn't have anyway, but that's good to know.
Yeah.
It seems rude to ask a person about the size.
Yeah. How much money do you have? Yeah.
Right. It's like age, weight, size of your fund.
Yeah.
All of those should be on. All right. Well, I always build in a little extra time just to be ready and not to curse us, but it seems like things are smoothly rolling along. So we can go ahead and start if you're ready. If you guys are ready.
I am good.
Right.
I will hide.
Don't hide, Roger.
I know. He always says that. I always feel bad.
So sad.
Okay. Here we go.
The Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience and many Texans, not outside organizations. To support the Daily Tech News Show, visit dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, February 28th, 2017. I'm Tom Merritt, and joining me today, I'm very excited to have Rob DeMillo, venture partner at SparkLabs Global and CTO at Nimble Collective. Rob, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We go back. We have a connection from back in the Revision 3 days. That's how I know Rob. But you are moving on. You have moved on to bigger and better things. And we should be clear off the top. Rob is not speaking on behalf of all venture capitalists.
That's very true.
But as someone who is involved in the industry, I think it'll be a good chance to maybe bust some fear, uncertainty, and doubt around what VCs actually do and what they don't do and how different ones are different. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
Also, we are going to talk about Amazon S3 having a partial outage right now as we record. Amazon has only said it's due to increased error rates for Amazon S3 requests in the US East 1 region. It is affecting isitdownrightnow.com, which means I have no idea if anything is actually down or not. It's also affecting was affecting Amazon's own AWS status updates. They were all showing green while they had the error report up at the top. That was interesting. And obviously large swaths of the internet in and out today. And I know you guys were affected as well, Rob.
Yeah, we were. We've got, Nimble Collective does a virtualized pipeline of animation systems. So when you live in the cloud and the cloud goes away, you get some problems.
Yeah. Well, that aside, and that is a temporary problem for today, I do want to talk to you a little bit about that before we let you go at the end of the day. But let's start off with some more top stories. So right before we started the show, YouTube went and announced YouTube TV that combines live content from broadcasting cable networks with the other content you get on YouTube. So far, we know ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC are included, along with their local broadcast channels and many of their cable channels. So you'll get FX, you'll get ESPN. There does not seem to be any programming from Turner, like TNT and TBS, Viacom, MTV, Comedy Central, AMC, Discovery, A&E. None of those are on board as yet, though there hasn't been a lot for this announcement other than the announcement. They didn't show off demos or anything like that. The product is separate from YouTube Red. So if you're paying for YouTube Red, you don't get this. And I think if you want to get commercial free and all of that, you got to pay for YouTube Red. But the YouTube Red originals will be available on YouTube TV in some manner. It is supposed to arrive this spring, and the 4 major broadcast networks and 30 channels will start at $35 a month and give you access for up to 6 users at a time. Rob, I'm curious if you use any of these cord cutting services like DirecTV Now, Sling, or any of that.
Yeah, I do. I use most of them, actually. My house is wired for all sorts of stuff, and I also still get over cable all the services there too.
So do you look at this and say, oh, this is something that will help me because I've got a YouTube app on all of those things that I have, so I might as well add this to the series.
Well, it's weird because it's diversification in an attempt to consolidate, and so there's still not a service that provides everything that I personally am interested in, which is why I still have cable coming into my house.
Yeah, I thought that YouTube and Hulu is supposed to launch one of these later this year as well. Might give me an alternative to PlayStation Vue, which is kind of what I rely on for most things. I still keep a Sling TV subscription, but I don't necessarily use it much anymore because PlayStation seems to have everything I want. This is great because it adds the YouTube stuff and it makes it easy. I've already got the apps, right?
Yep.
But without those extra cable networks yet, which again may be solved, I'm probably sticking with PlayStation Vue for now.
Interesting.
The Raspberry Pi Foundation unveiled a new single board computer, the Raspberry Pi Zero W. The $10 computer includes the same wireless capabilities of the Raspberry Pi 3, including 802.11n Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4, along with the same CPU and RAM of the original Raspberry Pi Zero, which you could look at it as taking Bluetooth 4 and 802.11n Wi-Fi and adding that to the Raspberry Pi Zero. The Raspberry Pi Zero W is available now from the Foundation's channel partners. I know a few people who are very excited about this because they didn't want to have to jimmy around the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth limitations, but they also didn't want to shell out, for all of the power of the full Raspberry Pi 3. You don't mess around with any of this stuff, do you?
I actually do. So my house is, aside from being a streaming haven, is also an IoT haven. So I have got the original version of the Raspberry Pi that I screwed around with to connect to some of my SmartThings controllers. And it's fallen out of favor. Like there's so many online services that do what I want to do anyway. But
well, and that's usually the case with stuff like the Raspberry Pi. They're very cool for people who want to mess around, who want to tweak stuff and create their own systems. But eventually somebody's going to put a product out that is as affordable as this for people who don't want to have to mess around with it. And then you wonder, okay, well, do I keep my homemade solution or not?
Yeah, well, there's also full PCs coming on a stick, right? And at some point, that price differential is just going to go completely away. And if you've got a full Windows or Linux machine running on a small USB stick, is there really a place for Raspberry Pi at this point?
Rich Straffolino, who helps write Daily Tech headlines with us and is occasionally on this show as well, sent me a link saying, great, now I can make this. And it was a picture of someone who has taken their Raspberry Pis and created a virtual reality recording, like a 360-degree recording system with, I don't even remember how many. There were 30 or 40 Raspberry Pis all pointed at the person.
Good Lord. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you remember like thinking machines from way back in the day, but those were built off of 64. I forgot what the chip manufacturer was. They don't exist anymore, but chips that used to power very, very small components for video games, and they would build these huge supercomputers out of hundreds of thousands of these things because it was cheaper.
Yeah. What would a Beowulf cluster of Raspberry Pis do for you?
Heat your house.
Maybe. Heat a room.
Yeah,
It's like a
definitely.
space heater, like not meant to heat an entire house, just
Yeah.
supplemental. Microsoft announced Game Pass, a $10 a month service that lets users play any of more than 100 Xbox One and Xbox 360 games. The available games will change from time to time, but at launch will include Halo 5 Guardians, Payday 2, NBA 2K16, and Soul Calibur 2. Games download to the console, and you'll have the option to buy them at a discount if you want to keep them on the console. But the idea of having them on the console is you don't have to deal with latency. They're not streaming over the internet. Xbox Insider Preview members get first crack at it, followed by Xbox Live Gold members, and then a full launch for anybody who wants to join later this spring. People are calling it Netflix for Xbox games.
Is this their answer to PlayStation Plus?
Well, they have their own answer to PlayStation Plus, but it does seem like they're raising table stakes, saying, okay, now we've got something even, your PlayStation Plus was better than our existing service, so now we're going to do this as well. Do you play a lot of Xbox games?
I used to actually. I had a PS3 and an Xbox 360 for the longest time, and I play them both equally. And then I bought the PS4, and I realized I wasn't turning on my Xbox anymore, so I got rid of that actually 2 weeks ago. And so now I'm just a Sony guy.
Oh, yeah. And you're not alone. That is something I hear from a lot of people, and the numbers sort of bear it out as well. So Microsoft trying to make it a little more attractive to use the Xbox universe. I don't know that this is the kind of feature that changes anybody's mind, though.
No, they tripped coming in the door, right? When they released Xbox One, and they had this weird stuff with the pricing, and they had this weird stuff with the streaming, and I don't think they ever recovered from that.
I would like to see this extend to PCs. When and if it does that, then I think it becomes a lot more compelling.
True.
Wall Street Journal says its sources say Apple will introduce 3 new iPhones in the fall. One of them is the rumored anniversary update. So you'd get an iPhone 7S and 7S Plus, and then the iPhone X or anniversary version. That one we've heard a lot of rumors about. This time the Wall Street Journal sources say it's going to have an OLED screen, a touch zone on the chin of the device. We heard that from Ming-Chi Kuo previously. And the journal sources say Apple will switch from Lightning to USB-C, which I want to believe, Rob, but I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, I wouldn't believe that either. I've seen this announcement this morning as well, and there's nothing in there that's particularly compelling.
OLED screen is fine. That's great. Like you say, it's not crazy compelling. We've heard wireless charging. We've talked about all of that. So that's interesting. We'll see if the price actually ends up being $1,000. USB-C would actually be the more compelling feature for me, because I am starting to get more devices, like my Nexus phones, that have USB-C. And so being able to use headphones between different devices would be a lovely thing again.
Yeah.
Someday.
Yeah, someday.
I can dream.
Yes.
Security researcher Troy Hunt is among the folks who discovered that data from Cloud Pets toys, made by a company called Spiral Toys, was available online for anyone to see. Turns out a MongoDB database was stored in a public-facing network, and Troy goes into details about how they were storing staging and test services next to public services, which caused part of this problem. They were using real data in their staging servers, etc. It was indexed by the connected things search engine Shodan, and you could find email addresses and passwords. Now, the passwords were stored as a bcrypt hash, so they weren't plain text. The bcrypt hash is a good encryption, but they were there in the database for anybody to get. And while pictures and recordings made by children who play with the toys, because the whole deal with the toys is kids can have their picture taken by the teddy bear and leave messages for their parents, and then they're uploaded to the cloud. You could not find those in the database, but there were references to them which could be used to find them on S3, which, I don't know, maybe that's why S3 is down today. Probably not.
I was trying to find the toy database.
Yeah. And the other thing that Troy Hunt found was that a lot of the passwords were super short, some of them 1 character short, which even if you're using bcrypt is easy enough to reverse engineer and break and get the hash. Several people reported contacting Cloud Pets as far back as December 30th with no response. Cloud Pets has now this week responded saying, we didn't get contacted, and we don't think anyone has been able to access any sensitive information. However, Hunt in his post shows that people were at least saying they had the database and asking for ransoms. And it looks like a lot of people would have been able to access at least the email addresses and the hash passwords.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, this
people
is
are lovely.
this is the kind of thing as an Internet of Things user and fan that's got to give you pause. I mean, granted, this is one very small company in one particular niche, but it's not an unusual story of a connected device not taking all the security precautions that we would like.
Yeah, I had so one of my IoT devices at home it was a garage door opener that was connected to my system to find out if the garage is open. It would shut it after 5 minutes. I woke up one morning at 4:30 a.m. to the sound of my garage door opening. Yanked it out. Done.
Was just being port scanned maybe or something?
No idea. No clue.
No, yeah.
It's out.
You've seen that episode of Mr. Robot, though, right?
Yes, I have.
And had you at that point?
Yeah, no. At that point, I had not.
Okay, because I would have been way freaked out at that point. But yeah, I mean, what can we say to companies about taking this sort of thing seriously? And it does seem a little bit like Spiral Toys was saying, well, it's just email addresses. And Troy Hunt's saying, yeah, but once you've got that, you can lead to other things, and then they can get into apps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So there's a lot of vectors going on here, right? So small companies are moving very, very fast, and security is hard. It's just hard, and so it unfortunately winds up getting sort of put on a shelf sometimes when you're going at lightning speed to get to the next round of funding. There's also the small device problem where it's difficult to put the proper technologies on there to do the protection, and then there's just the folks that really don't think it through. They just don't understand that, yeah, it might be just email addresses, but it's email addresses associated with this thing that they bought, and off they go. So.
Yeah. And honestly, it could be worse. This is just a toy. But you're talking about pictures of your children. That's unsettling for parents.
Yes, it is.
That's not something you want just out and about everywhere.
Yeah.
Finally, MS Power User reports that the latest Windows Insider preview build of Windows 10 includes an option to only allow apps from the Windows Store to be installed. Before you freak out, at least in the preview, the option is off. You have to opt into this. So this is a precaution that you can take to say, you know what, I want to lock this down. I don't want to have any Win32 apps installed because a certain use case, or I've got a person who can't be trusted to know how to install apps, etc. And there's also two settings. You can either block all the Win32 apps and say only Windows Store, or you can say, give me a pop-up, give me a dialog box, and make me confirm that I want to install this Win32 app before I do.
Yeah, this is going to be, the equivalent on Android is you uncheck the download from third-party sources thing.
Yeah, right. It's very similar to that. And it's way better than what Mac OS has done, which is by default turn off anything outside of the App Store. And then I always have to go in a new install and change it to the thing that alerts me and says, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But basically, I feel like this is a good option as long as it stays off by default. Do you agree?
As long as it stays off by default. I mean, I'm unfortunately old enough to remember, screwing around with PCs way back in the day, and it's fun to do things on the side and get things in from over the internet and whatever. So as long as that option is there somehow, I'm fine.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of scuttlebutt out there about Windows having a version of Windows 10 that's Windows Cloud. And I could see them wanting to have this option for that, where they're like, on these particular devices, probably tablets in most cases, it is just Windows Store stuff. And that's a different situation as well.
Sure.
Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in less than 10 minutes, subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. All right, once again, not representing all venture capitalists, but big thanks to Rob for being willing to kind of shed some light on this industry. And I've got my questions broken down into two areas. There's the basics for people who really just are like, I don't understand how it all works, and we'll get to that. But there's also the misunderstandings. And I want to start with the biggest misunderstanding, because I heard this when I asked people for questions. Alternatively, people say, why don't venture capitalists care about profit, thinking like they just throw money away on these companies that go out of business? Or people saying, why do venture capitalists only care about profit? Doesn't anybody care about the ideas that these companies have? Kind of generally speaking, how would you address those views?
Well, there's two words in venture capitalism. One is venture and one is capitalism, right? So yes, of course they care about profit. That's the reason that they're in that business in the first place, and it's been very, very good for them, right? They've for the most part, the venture capital industry has succeeded in ways that people didn't imagine when the concept was first created. The not being interested in the company part is about as untrue a statement as you could possibly get. Each venture capital company deals in a certain genre of technology or biotechnology or what have you, and in those genres, it breaks down into subclasses. So there might be a venture capital company that focuses on media. There might be one that focuses on robotics. But they get into those fields and they get into those interests because they do care about that industry, right? So that's it. So it's a combination of things. It's like, hey, these folks are doing something that I think is really neat, and I think there's a potential here to make some bank on it. So
yeah, and I think that probably causes a lot of the confusion, because you also want to make money back. That's the whole point.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean if venture capitalists only wanted to make money, all of their investments would probably be in porn companies or something.
Yes, and some do. But
yeah, well, yeah, and like you said, they are interested in particular genres. So
yeah, exactly.
there's different funds for different things.
Correct.
The other thing I saw a lot of people say is, why does it seem like tech companies can fool VCs into giving them money with buzzwords and funny names? Where do you think that perception comes from?
I don't know. You ever go on a bad date? Like sometimes, sometimes you get the perception of what happens up front is not really what the long-term goal of the company is. But what's important to understand here is the rigor involved in getting money from a venture capitalist in the first place, or a seed round fund, which is what SparkLabs is. You not only have to have an idea and a concept, you have to have a team that the venture capitalists believe in. You have to be able to survive a certain amount of due diligence, depending on which fund you're trying to get involved with. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. And it does weed out a lot of I don't want to say charlatans, but it does weed out a lot of folks that are trying to like make something from nothing kind of thing. But of course, wanted to get by, and that does happen.
And that it seems to be just the statistical fluke of you hear the horror story of the people who are like, they had no business plan and they got millions of dollars. And the fact is, that's probably not entirely true. And it sounds like what you're saying is it's pretty unusual.
It's pretty unusual. .com era was the opposite. But there were companies in the .com era that had business plans that involved losing money for decades before they turned profit. And
that is interesting. Why was that okay back then?
Because it's going to sound real stupid, but everybody was doing it. So everyone was afraid to miss the boat, and people saw some early successes in internet companies. Netscape, for instance, was. I remember being in a government office because I used to work for federal government, and watching the Netscape stock with everybody else, and it was the first time we had seen anything like that.
Yeah.
And it just climbed to like $70 something, and everyone was shocked. And that almost to that day, I can remember just the gold rush starting, and so everyone was trying to cash in on that, and I think that probably caused a lot of trouble.
I remember when we started to get the wave of IPOs from Twitter. I guess it started as early as Google, but I'm thinking particularly of Twitter and Facebook, and how there was definitely this feeling of expectancy that, are we headed back? Are we finally over the bust and we're back to Netscape days? And the thing is, we probably will never see that again.
No, we probably won't. There's a lot of breaks that have been put into place, and a lot of regulations for good or for bad that are preventing that from happening. But what's interesting, if you look back over what happened in the .com era, the companies that survived that, they're the ones that actually had legitimate business plans. Right? So the Amazons of the world, for instance.
Yeah. So what is the next pitfall then that VCs have to avoid? Because like you say, if anybody in any investing community, not just venture capitalism, feels like they're missing out, they're going to start doing things that maybe in isolation they wouldn't do. Like, I guess I'm not asking you to predict the future, but how do you watch out for that?
It's interesting. So the investment community in general is in some aspect is very sort of global, the way it thinks about things, and in some aspect it's very insular. And there's a lot of communication amongst the venture community as to, is this a real thing? Is this a bubble? Is this a fad? And people in aggregate basically sort of figure out what the next thing is, right? And so investors lean towards that if their particular genre and subclass like fall into that category. So, big data and IoT and back in the day, enterprise technology and all that stuff. So they do tend to kind of fact check with each other to a certain degree, and try and avoid a lot of those pitfalls that occurred early on.
Now, the final of the misunderstandings that I kept saying was, and this one isn't so much of a misunderstanding because I know this also does happen, but I don't think it happens as much as people think. A venture capitalist comes in and undermines what the founders wanted to do. It changes the direction of the company and ruins the vision. Does that really happen that often?
No, that's incredibly rare, and it's not to say it doesn't happen, but it's pretty rare. Usually, what happens is, and you'll hear this over and over again, and almost to the point of sounding trite, but it's actually true, is that investors invest in teams. They don't really invest in well, I shouldn't say that. They do invest in technology, but it's more important that they've got a team that has done it before, or they trust, or has shown competence in whatever field that they happen to be in. And so they invest in those teams. And they give most teams at most companies, most venture capitalists in most companies give most teams in most startups. How's that for qualification? They give them enough rope to do what they need to do. And at some point, if things start heading south, yes, there is a point there that venture capitalists will step in to say, you know what, listen, we got to have a conversation. But I have been an entrepreneur for 30 years, going on 30 years at this point. And I've not been in a situation where venture capitalists have come and say, no, you need to be building a spreadsheet. That's what you should be doing. You should be making a spreadsheet company, right? So that's not actually ever been the situation I've been involved with. I do know people where that has happened, but it's pretty rare.
What about I think maybe this is more common, but maybe I'm falling under the misunderstandings, that Silicon Valley scenario where the venture capitalists didn't do anything, but they decided to put an adult in charge. They put a CEO who then changed the direction of the company. Is that?
Yeah, that happens. I mean, there's at all levels. So the role that I play when I'm in the entrepreneurial company is chief technology officer or chief operating officer. Like CEO role is incredibly difficult to do. It's like, kudos to all those folks. But what will happen is an investor will watch a company as it performs, and they'll have conversations, very open conversations with the board. It's pretty rare that a C-level executive board at a company and a venture board that's sitting on the board of this company don't have a common conversation about, hey, maybe we should move the chess pieces around and swap this person in for that person. But it does happen. It does happen.
Yeah, that seems like something that would be more likely to play out that way than the VCs themselves stepping in. Again, like you say, most of the time. Well, let's talk a little bit about the basics of how this works. I think a lot of people wonder why a tech company wouldn't just get a bank loan. Why do you go to venture capitalists?
Would you buy your car on a credit card?
I mean, not a very good one, no.
No, yeah. I mean, there's bank loans come with a lot of strings attached to them, right? So you could go to a bank, sure, and get a loan to start your company, and some people do that. The return that you would have to make up for the interest that you're paying on that loan are kind of extraordinary. But with a venture capitalist, the terms may or may not be better. But you're getting a lot of things that you don't get with a bank. And this is where I think people don't understand is that it's not just the venture capitalists choosing the company, it's the company choosing the venture capitalists. You want to make that pairing in a way where you're able to leverage the advice and the understanding that the people at the venture company have on your behalf, right? And that doesn't happen with a bank.
With a bank, if you're borrowing, you're saying, I will pay back this amount at this interest rate. Yeah. That's it, right?
Yeah.
With a venture capitalist, are you getting a different deal that says, if we make money, you're going to get this much back, but if we don't, there's not like a solid interest rate?
No. Yeah, if depending on which company you're looking at, the loss-win ratio is something like 40 to 60%. So venture companies, their portfolios lose up to 60% of their investments, and those are write-offs, right? And nobody likes to do it, and obviously they struggle to make sure that never ever happens. But of course it happens, and it happens half the time. But the fiduciary requirement of paying anything back doesn't actually happen on the part of the company.
Now, when you're funding as a venture capitalist or participating in a fund, you are taking a different risk than buying stocks in companies. Why do let's go at it from the other direction. Why do venture capitalists decide to back companies that way instead of just going out and buying stock?
Because the win ratio is quite high, and the terms that they have going into investing in a startup company are significantly better than just going out and purchasing stock of a company. And by the way, most startup companies, you can't buy their stock anyway; they're not public. So becoming part of the ground floor of something that the VC company that is doing the investment has determined is going to be a big deal, or a bigger deal than the amount of money they're putting in, that's their win.
Yeah. So if I'm putting this together right, and tell me if I'm not, a tech company that wants to get started may need a lot more money than they could raise, certainly at better terms than they could raise from a bank. So you go to venture capitalists. The venture capitalist wants to fund it because otherwise they would not be able to buy stock in this company unless it succeeds and can and issue stock. And so they have a bet that they decide we think this company will succeed.
That's more or less correct. I mean, it's an educated bet, but it's a bet. Yeah.
Yeah. What's a realistic time frame that you expect to get a return on a company?
Yeah, I saw that question is really tough to answer. It's anywhere from 2 to 10 years, and it depends on the market space that you're in, the field that you're in, what people are willing to do for the long run. Biotech is a huge return. It's huge return, but it's also a huge run rate to get to that return because there are federal regulations involved, tests that get performed, and then human trials and all that. And so that process is very, very lengthy. And the venture capitalists involved in the biotech firms, they're aware of that going in. They know that when they put in their $9 million or whatever they're putting in, they're not going to see a penny of that probably for a decade.
Yeah.
In the case of the tech industry, where things are moving fairly quickly, that return comes somewhere between 2 and 4 and 5 years out.
Now that brings up another question. You mentioned tech and biotech, and that's what most people think of when they think of venture capitalists, because that's what gets all the headlines. But there are other industries that take venture capital. And you mentioned that people specify in genre. Are those entirely different types of companies in different areas? How does it work?
They're entirely different types of people. It works exactly the same. I have no qualifications whatsoever going into biotech. I have no qualifications whatsoever going into robotics, right? So there are fields that people invest in, and the levers that you pull, the numerators and denominators that you pull to figure out like how much money you're going to get back and all that stuff, it's different from field to field. But the basic concept and precept is the same.
So there's Sand Hill Road for tech. Is there
San Diego for
Coal Mine Road for energy?
Yeah, sure. There are actually. The San Diego, for instance, a lot of the venture capitalists down there, they're all in biotech. I mean, it's a biotech capital with very little in the way of actual tech. And then Boston as well. Boston's a big biotech location. New York is really fintech, financial technologies, and advertising. And media. Los Angeles is media. So there are different areas of the country that sort of focus on different things based off of what the hometown boys do good, that kind of thing.
And worldwide too, right? There's also in Europe and Asia.
Yeah, I mean SparkLabs Global, the place where I'm a venture partner. Our headquarters are Seoul, Korea. And we're a seed fund company, and we invest in companies worldwide, right? And the footprint is such that it doesn't really matter. We're trying to level the playing field. It doesn't really matter where you are. And we've got portfolio companies in Israel and portfolio companies in Korea and the United States, and
just look them up in the book. You call them up. You got a business plan, right?
More or less.
Well, thank you, Rob, for helping us understand that. I know for a lot of people, maybe this felt a little businessy, but we talk so often about companies getting seed money or raising rounds of funding and this and that. I thought it was important for people to understand a little bit more about what that process is like.
Yeah, it's I lost all my hair.
Really? Was that from venture capitalism?
Yeah, it was from being an entrepreneur. No. Being on the other side of the table is one thing, but being an entrepreneur, will lose your hair.
Tell you, being an independent podcaster ain't much easier.
I'm
You
sure.
see the gray in the beard there.
I know, it's so sad.
Thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Real quickly, before we're out of here, Dan wrote in to feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com and said, you know what? Having text messages, which are essentially data, not count towards our data, because we were mentioning we have unlimited plans here in the US, is like we're zero rating text messages, making us more likely to choose those over other services that will count towards our cap, like WhatsApp. I don't think anyone really thinks about it like that, but I thought it was an interesting way of looking at it. And Dan's right. I don't think Dan's trying to say we should outlaw unlimited text messaging plans as a violation of net neutrality, but he's pointing out, like, there are a lot of situations where we will prefer a service because of the way it's presented. And the fact that most of the world does WhatsApp because they don't have unlimited text messaging is interesting in the light of what Dan is saying.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I didn't get my start, but I was in a SMS-based company very long time ago, and it's a limited thing. I understand what he's saying, but the services provided by WhatsApp are so much greater than what you can do in text messaging that I'm not sure you can equate the two things.
Well, and I think that's what he's saying is the reason, because we've had several international listeners say, you guys use SMS in the United States? And we're like, yeah, we do. And I think what he's saying is that could explain why we're still addicted to the text message in the US more so.
I think that's part of it. And there's it's just habit. So the company I was part of was MCube, and we were the first people to write a gateway that connected carriers together. So did T-Mobile to AT&T. Before we showed up, there was no way to get a text message easily from one carrier to the other. And we turned it on. And the first day we turned it on, it was, and I remember these numbers very, very clearly. It was 17,000 transactions a day, so 17,000 text messages a day. Then we sold 18 months later to VeriSign, and we were at something like 3.5 billion a day. Right. So in 18 months, we went from several orders of magnitude increase. And so Americans just think text messaging first.
Yeah. Well, thank you to you and your team for making that possible. I remember when that when that happened, because it was a pain before that. You couldn't. I'd be like, oh, you're on AT&T.
A lot of @signs. There were a lot of @signs and percentages.
Yep.
Things you'd have to text in.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you to everybody who supports this show. If you get some value out of what we're doing here, we just ask you give a little value back at dailytechnewsshow.com/support. You can do it by PayPal. You can do it by Patreon at patreon.com/DTNS. In fact, if you sign up to $5 level, you get an extra RSS feed with extra content. You get a weekly email that summarizes the news and has an exclusive column from me. So check all that out, patreon.com/DTNS. Rob DeMillo, thank you so much. Tell us a little bit more before we go about what you're doing at Nimble Collective. I know you mentioned SparkLabs Global, and we talked a lot about that, but I think what you guys are doing with Nimble Collective is really interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, actually. So Nimble was started by 4 folks who are a big deal in the animation industry, Rex Grinion and Jason Schlafer and Scott LaFleur and Bruce Wilson. And so they've got experience with large-scale graphic animation for film and television, right? So a lot of folks here were involved in Shrek and Toy Story and things like that. And part of the barrier of entry to animation in general is the cost of setup and the cost of your time. So to do sort of a large amount of work in the animation field, you need, $25,000, $30,000 just to start, right? You get the large workstations, you get the licensing for all the animation products you're going to use. So these guys came up with the idea of pushing that whole thing into the cloud, right? So taking the animation pipeline from start to finish and pushing it out in the cloud. And some of the animations that you're seeing there on the website, there's, if you keep on going, there's like chicken animations, which have been done on relatively low cost equipment, Chromebooks and laptops and that sort of thing. And so the idea is that you produce high quality animation complete through to rendering with very low barrier to entry. And the idea was so compelling, I couldn't resist coming here. So
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that I could use a Chromebook and have that advanced power available in a situation with the internet that we have today. Obviously, you can't be doing this on a dial-up connection, right? But it's kind of,
or today, actually, physically today, but
or literally like just
yeah,
today,
literally
right?
today.
Yeah. But go check it out, folks, if you're interested in that. NimbleCollective.com. Anything else to let people know about before we go?
That's all good.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, no, thank you for being on. This was great. Love to have you back sometime.
Absolutely.
Now we're going to finish up with Peter Wells, who has been at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona and took some time out of his busy schedule there to let us know his report card for our report card on yesterday's show. Good day, my friend.
G'day, Tom. This is Peter here over in Barcelona. So I'm here at Mobile World Congress, so forgive the noise in the background there, but I thought I'd give you a quick call to rate how you guys did on your ratings yesterday. Now, first of all, a couple of actuallys. When it comes to Sony, you mentioned the 4K HDR camera inside the Sony. It's actually the screen is 4K HDR. The camera itself doesn't do HDR, unfortunately. It does have all the other whiz-bang things like the 960 frames per second super slow-mo, which shoots in 720p, by the way, if you were wondering. Look, all of that is kind of cool, but it's only available in the Xperia Z or XZ Premium, which that's my constant frustration with Sony. I think that they make some great phones, but then they spread the lineup. And the XA1 is actually the best looking phone, but it's the cheapest. And so I want the best looking phone to also have all the very shiny features. So I wish Sony would just kind of consolidate the line, just make one amazing phone with one amazing camera. I think that would play to their strengths a lot more than trying to have this kind of lineup for everyone. But moving on, so LG, I really love the LG G6. I know it doesn't look that flash in the photos, but in the hand, it's so wonderful to hold. It's got a really lovely curved back, and that screen is stunning. So I'm using it right now. I've really fallen in love with this phone. I didn't expect to because I'm not really a big phone kind of guy, but the round edges, the fact that it's quite narrow, means that even in my tiny little Trump S cans, I can still kind of hold the phone and be able to reach most of the touch targets. So yeah, big plus there for the LG G6 for me. Moving on to the BlackBerry. Now, I was never a fan of the BlackBerry physical keyboard, a bit before my time, and so I wasn't really impressed typing on that thing this time around either. I made so many typos when I was trying to use it. It just kind of feels so odd and so old. And as soon as you turn the phone into landscape mode to watch Netflix or something like that, then you've got this honking great keyboard on the side that you can't get rid of. And so I think it's going to play well for nostalgia, but I don't think it's going to actually play well in terms of sales. I don't think many people are actually going to rush out and get it, especially when the big reason to get a BlackBerry back in the day was the BlackBerry Enterprise server, and that's gone away, so I can't really see where that's going. Now, speaking of nostalgia, of course, the thing that has caught everyone's attention is the Nokia 3310. If you go down to the Nokia booth, it's a gigantic booth, the size of these things down in big conferences like this. Well, the Nokia booth is huge, and everyone is just crowded into this one little mosh pit on the side, which is the Nokia 3310 display. Everyone's trying to get their hands on it. It is super cute. It is super gorgeous. So light as well. And I do like the idea of like a phone that would last an entire month on one charge sitting in your bag, but it only works on 2G. So in Australia, we've turned off our 2G networks. I'm sure many other nations around the world have probably done the same thing. So I don't know how many places the Nokia is actually going to work in. But again, I think most people are looking at it purely for the nostalgia. I think it grabbed the headline, so it did what Nokia needed it to do. But yeah, overall, I'm kind of glad that I can't buy it because then I won't. So moving on. So Samsung, of course. Samsung, like you said, they had a troubling announcement. Actually have the S8 ready, so everyone in the room, the vibe of the room seemed to be everyone sitting around waiting to find out when they had to book tickets to New York. And now we have a date. We know that it's going to be the end of March, so that's kind of what everyone was there for, which is a bit of a shame because they actually did have some nice things to show. I really do like the new Tab S3 that they've shown off. It does have a stylus built in, and it's free, unlike say the Apple Pencil that you have to buy separately for $150. I think that's a very nice value add there from Samsung. I like the Windows 10 tablet that they've done as well, but it's just I don't know. I've used those in the past, and I kind of prefer a proper laptop when it comes to Windows 10. Maybe I'm just an old man in that way. Moto have, look, they've continued to establish themselves as the high end of the mid-range, if that makes any sense, of vanilla Android phones. So I think they've really stepped into that market that the Nexus used to have. Now that Google has kind of abandoned that market for the Pixel, Moto is there to grab that market and say, we will provide the best quality Android experience and an experience that updates all the time, so you're never waiting for an update. So I think they'll do very well with that, and it's a much nicer phone this time around with the aluminium back than the previous plastic versions that we've seen from the Moto. So that's about it. There's been nothing that's really kind of set the world on fire here at Mobile World Congress 2017. I should mention also the Huawei P10. I had a chat with Roger Chang in the chat room there, and he was saying that he's not a fan of those kind of the fake bokeh effects that you get from, say, the iPhone 7 Plus and the P10. I'm a massive fan, actually. I know it's a gimmick. I know it's kind of software, kind of hardware. And of course, it's a bit of a hack, but the results are fantastic. I really, really like them. Of course, I'm not going to probably print any of the photos I take, but when my photos are going to end up in Instagram and Facebook, then I think that that effect is actually quite nice. And I really do like the Huawei implementation of it. I think it works a little bit better than Apple's version in the iPhone. It's a little gung-ho sometimes. The effect sometimes looks a little bit cartoony, but Huawei actually allow you to adjust the focus and adjust the effect after you've taken the photos. So if it does go a little bit overboard, you can always kind of tone it back a little bit. So I really do like that feature, and it also works much better with a subject that is constantly moving, like my toddler when I'm trying to take photos. The iPhone 7 Plus can just never get a decent portrait shot of her, whereas the Huawei always does. So that's the reason why I really, really dig the Huawei P10. Anyway, so if I had to choose a winner of the show from my perspective, it's hard to say. I think I'm going to give it to the LG G6. It is just so pretty. But yeah, I do think the Huawei is exceptional value, especially if you're looking for that dual lens system. So anyway, that is my look at Mobile World Congress for 2017. Love the show, mate. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Peter, for letting us know all about that. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Scott Johnson and a guest to explain mesh networking to us. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Good show. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, you bet. Did you? Thanks for sticking around. Did you enjoy Pete's report?
I did. Actually, I'm like jealous because I didn't go to Mobile World this year.
I like getting the report with all the background kind of natural sound too. I mean,
you've been there, right?
Yeah.
It's like city within a city thing.
Totally, yeah. Oh man, I love Barcelona too.
I do too. Yeah.
It's the best.
Sardines, it's good.
And Hamon, Manchego.
Oh yeah,
so good.
Let's go, guys. Let's hop on.
Let's go now.
Here next.
When am I down to LA next?
Yes.
Probably. I'm definitely going to be there in May. I might be down in April.
Oh.
Yeah. So we might all work out. So April, I got to be in New York and Seoul. But I think I still might go to LA for a little bit.
That's a lot of traveling.
It's too much traveling, actually. Yeah.
Like, do you ever wake up wondering, like, what time zone you're in?
No, but you do get depressed. Like, it's every so often you like show up and be like, oh, Jesus Christ, I just want to be home. This is so horrible. But and going transatlantic, trans-Pacific is always a shock.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like,
It's the next day, and then you go back. It's like, what?
Yep.
It's just repeating the same
You
day.
arrived before you left. Oh,
Yes. There's a lot of TARDISing going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
The arriving before you leave when you come back from the Asia Pacific Rim is amazing.
BioCow in our chat room says to thank you. He knows Bad Weave and a few others appreciated having you on the show today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's nice.
Nice. Very cool. All right.
Right.
I'm gonna go check out some other meetings. And,
All right, man.
go from there.
Thanks again for squeezing us into your schedule. I know you're a busy guy. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Let's go grab a cocktail next time I'm down, everybody.
Yeah, let me know when you're down.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Later.
Thanks
Say
a
hi
lot.
to Eileen.
I
Say hi,
will.
Eileen.
I will.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Sorry about forgetting Samara's name. I knew I spaced on something.
Well, and I didn't want to get it wrong. So
I know. No,
I feel bad that I didn't say Samara, but
no, it's
I
my
didn't want to
fault.
say
I thought
Samovar or something stupid like that. So I
I
just
thought I typed it in, and then I
Yeah.
was like,
and she just goes by Samara.
as far as I know, I haven't talked to her face to
Okay.
face.
Yeah, we
I've
should
only talked to her.
find out before tomorrow too.
So titles: Angel-less and Demons of Venture Capital,
Angels and Demons. I like it.
Venture Capital 101, which I like.
That's actually one of my faves, even though it's simple. It's good.
AWS Ampers.
I don't know.
It's a bit foggy in the cloud today.
that
It's pretty
one's
funny.
that one's good too. I really like that.
Your stuffed animals are spying on you. How to add venture capital. Amazon goes down with the river. Is it down? Clear skies at Amazon. Tech Venture Capital 101. Pie in the sky. I ordered an Uber and I got Lyft, and for that reason I'm out.
Okay.
4 and 20 cloud uses baked in a
Baked in a pie, raspberry pie. See, because
I like Venture Capital 101. Very clean.
We don't always have to have the ridiculous pun. We can actually have descriptive titles every so often. So sure, let's go for it.
Well, it's very interesting. The having been at a company that was very reliant on VC capital, it is very personality driven too. I mean, depending on the group of people you have put together, that's what makes it so crazy, because there isn't a single model that you replicate over and over again.
Right, or everyone would just do that. You know, like that's there is some skill to being able to figure out how to do this sort of thing. I thought he was a great guest. I mean, I know Rob and he's a great guy, but I thought he did a great job of explaining all that.
He has a crazy history. For people who don't know Rob, and I know him through Revision 3 as well. He was our CTO over there. He used to work at JPL. He used to work on programming not the Mars lander, but the rocket that takes the Mars lander to Mars. And so he has a very storied history in both technology, but also that VC side, that financing, that trying to get startups off the ground.
I loved his little anecdote there, the unexpected anecdote about making text messages work across carriers.
Yes.
The stuff like that always comes up where I'm like, you did that too?
It's one of those things you don't think of, but when you really think about it, how important, because it's like one of those things like, I don't know, for people who are listening who are younger than Tom or I, there was a time where you could not cash a check across state lines. Like interstate banking was kind of like really, that was highfalutin, right? You needed to have a bank account at a certain dollar level to even attempt that. For the rest of us, you would have to do all these complicated wire
That's why you had
transfers.
traveler's checks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted today. Like I can send my cousin or someone a check. I mean, not check, but PayPal, whatever. But across state lines on the internet, it's not an issue. Not an issue. There's all these
around the world. With PayPal, you can send money anywhere. It's insane.
It's a crazy environment, and people, and I think a lot of people misunderstand the motivation. For some of it, the money is key, but it's that kind of it's that atmosphere that they really thrive on. Like
it's a combination, and I don't know if we quite got that across. I think Rob did a good job.
He did a good job. I think
I could have asked for a little bit more, but but it's like, yes, it is about money. I don't think anybody's going to deny that, but it's about, okay, there's lots of different ways I could make money. What do I think are the really interesting ones?
Well, it's like eating, right? Everyone needs to eat, but people want to eat different things. And for these people, this is how they want to make that money. They thrive in that environment where it's high, I wouldn't say high pressure, but there are certain demands and expectations and stuff like that. I think it's interesting because, people I've talked to, family members and associates, they think venture capitalism is just like giving a loan and then just stepping back. Not that it's a lot more hands-on.
Well, and that's why and I think we did a good job of covering that. Like, sure, you can go to the bank and get a loan, but it doesn't give you the flexibility and the benefits.
And that there's something to be said, I think, about understanding a lot of these things, because policies are made around these. If you don't have a good grasp of exactly what's going on, you may inadvertently harm it more than help it.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of, there are, I didn't say this on the show, there are a lot of really bad venture capitalists, really just arrogant and mishandling things, and we hear about them because they are unusual. We don't hear about the vast number of them who just are reasonable people who, take reasonable risks and get a nice return. Like, there may be reasons to dislike venture capital, and maybe reasons to look at it as exploitative. But the reasons aren't because it's full of mean people or idiots. If you're gonna critique it, I think it's good to critique it, but critique it for the reasons that, you say, well, it's unfair because it's based on connections or things like that. Like those are fair things to talk about, but those aren't that different from the rest of our system.
I need to go to Costco. Speaking of, every time I see Zoe's name, not that I need bacon, but
Zoe brings bacon.
It reminds me I need to go grocery shopping because with 3 mouths to feed, the groceries go a little quicker.
Yeah, they do.
Actually, no, 3.5. Actually, about 3.5 mouths. It's like water.
Yeah. No, you got your wife's dad, your wife, and Ellie. Ellie's mouth's not even a half. It's getting to be pretty much a full mouth.
I'm trying to get her to eat vegetables, and it's like either a potato.
Yeah.
It's like getting carrots and stuff.
Were you a picky eater as a kid?
No, I was allergic. I was just allergic to a lot of foods, so I just
okay.
couldn't eat certain things. I grew out of them.
It's probably hard to tell if you were picky when you were limited to what you could
Well, I
eat.
loved eggs and strawberries, and those are the two things I couldn't eat because I remember. I liked broccoli.
I always liked my grandma's broccoli.
But I didn't like leafy vegetables. Like I didn't like salads and stuff. But
I was just bored by them. I didn't dislike them. If someone told me I had to eat a salad, I'd eat it. But I was never very excited about them. I don't think most people are, to be honest. I was not a very picky eater, though.
I was. What was the one thing that used to disgust me?
The only thing I would refuse to eat was sauerkraut. I hated sauerkraut.
Oh yeah, that was the thing. I didn't like pickles. I still hate pickles. Anything
really?
pickled, I don't like. Sour.
See, I like pickles, but I just didn't like sauerkraut.
Any kind of pickling, I'm kind of borderline on kimchi. If I bury it under a bunch of rice and a lot of other things,
I like kimchi because it's spicy, though. Yeah, and that's the burying, I guess.
But I cannot stand pickle foods. I think it's just I used to eat it too as a kid, but it's just like I ate it because I thought I had to eat it. And when I grew up and I realized it was an option.
You're like, I have an option.
I don't need it. I don't want to eat this. Like people, like Jen loves pickles because you're like, oh, I love the crispy, crunchy. It's like, it's just, why do you pickle it? You're taking a perfectly good. What is the pickle? A cucumber or something? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you have to pickle this?
Well, you're preserving it.
We have a refrigerator. Man is progressed.
These days we do. That's like salted meats. Why do you have beef jerky? You've got a refrigerator. Well,
I don't like beef jerky either. I used to like it, but I think I grew out of it after junior high. I think it was Slim Jims. Slim Jims are really gross to me, and I think for the longest time that's identified that as beef jerky. Mm-hmm. I just didn't want to eat it. It's like.
Well. The S3 outage finally directly affected us. SoundCloud can't.
Oh no!
Well, now it's taken the upload. SoundCloud must use S3 on its backend because it gave me a note saying we are having problems with our backend processes, but now it's just telling me it's processing. It tells me it uploaded. So, what to believe? Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the archive.org link in there for now, and then I'm going to wait a little bit before I publish, just to see. Let's see if it actually works. Well, sometimes SoundCloud just takes a long time to process anyway. So the fact that it actually shows me it uploaded makes me think maybe it really did.
God, this thing is so great. I am so over the moon. It's so sad. My life is.
What are you over the moon?
No, I got a desk monitor stand. Like, it's not like, where you basically it mounts to the side of the desk and you pop your flat panel off the stand that it comes on, and you can mount it so it floats above your desk, which is great. Now I have all this space that I didn't have before my desk. I think it's the bee's knees. I don't know why. I should have gotten one of these a long time ago. I'll get it when I move. And now that I've moved, I got one. Oh, I know why. Because my desk used to have a back to it, and I didn't have enough area to clamp anything onto it.
Sorry, we're just watching things process and upload. So, you know what? We probably should say goodbye to the fine folks.
Bye,
Goodbye,
fine folks.
We will talk to you tomorrow with Scott Johnson and Samara.